Yasso is known as the mayor of running. He's also one of the few people who have competed races on all 7 continents, including Mount Kilimanjaro. The new book, 100 Runs of a Lifetime, The World's Ultimate Races and Trails. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Rudy. Thanks for having me part of your
Uh,
show.
of course, from novices to seasoned marathoners, I mean, you have something for everybody in this book.
Yeah, that was the whole idea. Not everyone wants to run a marathon or even a half marathon. They can start out running a 1 mile race or a 5 kilometer race, 3.1 miles, whatever it is. And there's also a section that are not races or just runs. So only you know what pace you're running, and that's what people are intimidated by races because they think everyone's fast and they'll be the last one. And of course, then if you convince them into doing a race, they find out they're not the last one and they're not as slow as they think they are. But also to have that Part 4 section where you can just go do a trail in Central Park or Stanley Park in Vancouver, Central Park, of course, in New York City, and you control the pace. You do it when you want to do it. You're not stuck to like running the Chicago Marathon on the second weekend in October, where you got to be there ready to go at 7:30 in the morning. So I like that there are runs like that, or what I call they're runs, not races.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned PRs. That was something I was going to ask you about a little bit later. But obviously, it gets in the point of like how you're enjoying your running or how you are in your races. Sometimes you get a little bit kind of hung up on kind of beating your PR and whatnot. I mean, talk a little bit about that. Probably as the more races you do, does that become as important and maybe kind of challenging yourself? When you kind of feel that need to.
Yeah, Rudy, you hit it. I have this classic photo, and I didn't take the photos. They were taken by the Big Sur Marathon. But right at halfway, you go over to Bixby Bridge, which is a beautiful location, just very scenic in the Big Sur Marathon in California. And so there's a photo of me in 1990 running the Big Sur where I was pretty fast and was towards the front of the pack. And the exact same spot, 2017, there I am. And you can tell that I'm running at a much slower pace in 2017. And in the 1990 photo, I have hair, and the 2017 photo, you don't see any hair. And you can just tell the photo in 1990, I'm off the ground, flying along, and then the photo in 2017, it looks like I'm Velcro to the road that I'm not off the ground at all. But when I look at that photo, I could think, wow, look how much I slowed down over the years because I'm older and I've been doing this stuff for 48 years. But the exact opposite happened. The thing I remember when I looked at that photo and put them right next to each other, said the one thing that never changed, I still have the passion and the joy. And that's what you want. Like, it's inevitable to slow down if you stick with this sport and as you age. It's inevitable, but it's not a negative thing. You got to celebrate it and be happy that you can still do it.
Yeah, I've done a handful of marathons, and I always was around that 5 hour mark, because I recognized that like my family and friends came out to watch me, and I was like, that's hours of standing out. So like I would take a photo, I would talk to them, and I know I had friends who were like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go, but I would take the time,
Right.
and of course everyone has their own reasons and whatnot, and it was just my preference just to spend a couple of moments for those people who were
Yeah.
racing around the city to see me.
Yeah. I did the Rome Marathon 25 years ago, and my mom was there. She was in her mid 70s at the time. And I got a classic photo of her during the race. And she wasn't used to me stopping in a race, but I was doing Rome not as a try to get a fast time. I was loved that you get a tour of the city, and I have my arm around her and got this picture of my mom and I at Trevi Fountain. And Trevi Fountain is the backdrop, which is a nice backdrop to have. And then that photo, when my mom passed away, that became my favorite running moment. And it's still my favorite running moment.
That is, what's so funny is that I ran the Rome Marathon and I took my mom with me. As she came and supported me. She's like, I'm not gonna let you go by yourself, and I hired a tour guide to kind of be with her because I'm like, she doesn't necessarily know the language 100%, but to be able to kind of navigate it and see me, and it's one of the most treasured memories I have of spending time with her.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, when the photo was taken, I didn't know it would be a run of my lifetime. But when my mom passed away and I look back, it made Rome a run of a lifetime for me.
The run of a lifetime. Let's talk a little bit about motivation. Obviously, we're very seasonal here in the Chicago area, but we're doing 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons leading up to October for the full marathon. But people who maybe weren't running indoors and now they're trying to get that motivation to get started. Give us a couple of pointers on that.
Yeah, you just gotta get out there. That's the key. I always tell people just get too hung up on mileage and pace. They gotta know the exact mileage. And you see people, they finish a run and say they were heading out for a 3 mile run. They get back to where their car is or their house, and it's only at 2.9 on their GPS. So they run in circles till it hits three. And like your body doesn't know the difference between 2.9 and 3.0. Trust me. You just have to get out there and don't get hung up on the exact pace you think you should do, the exact distance you run. Just try to pick the prettiest run you can do in your area, where it's close to your home. You're going to run more runs where you live than or where you work if you run at lunch than anywhere else. So try to make it the prettiest run you can do, whether you can find a little trail on your run or whatever it is to get away from cars or traffic or just get a pretty view on that run. If you do that, you're going to be out. It gives you that reason to get out there. And you got to think of all the benefits you have in running: weight loss, stress release. I mean, it just really can help you out. So just get out there. Don't get hung up on the exact distance to run, the exact pace to run. And if you can run with friends, that's the best, because it forces you to be accountable, because your friend's there and he or she's going to want to run 4 miles or 3 miles, and you got to do it also. And then you forget about pace. You talk to each other and all of a sudden you're done your run. You can't believe that it just went by so quickly.
And you got to spend quality time with one of your friends. You ran over 1,000 races. Tell me a little bit of how you narrowed it down to 100.
It was brutal. I can't tell you, Rudy, how hard it was to get. I started off with 200, so I was able to narrow it down to 200, and then get down to 150, and then get down to 125, and then get down to 110. And I thought, God, there's some races that I just adore and are part of that I just can't get them on here. There just wasn't any room. So it was hard. It really was. But I had to look at like a map geographically, make sure I had everything covered, and also, a fair amount of international races, because National Geographic has such a global imprint, and just different types of races. So there's a little bit of everything in there that made that 100 list. And I snuck one in there. There is a run I talk about in the intro. So there actually is 101 in there. And I use that intro run as my guide to all that. So when I was doing a safari in Africa, I was in Tanzania, that near the Serengeti area, and the Ngorongoro crater. The crater's 18 and a half miles wide, or circular, and it's a cauldron. It's 2,000 feet down, and the crater floor is full of all the animals you want to see in Africa. But I convinced my guide when we were driving out of the crater, it's this straight up road that goes up that the 4-wheel Jeeps get up. I convinced him into letting me out of the Jeep and running in front of it. And he was a little dubious of my idea, but I convinced him into letting me do it, and ran out of that crater, up this crater wall, and got to the rim of the crater, Ngorongoro crater, right at sunset, and just this beautiful African sunset. And I always said that is my favorite, most memorable run of my lifetime. Now, I've been saying that for years. And then, of course, when the National Geo reaches out to me to ask me to author this book, I'm like, the title, 100 Runs of a Lifetime. So I use that one as my guide. And I didn't want it as one of the 100, so I snuck it in the intro. And it fits in there perfectly.
That is amazing. I could talk to you for 7 hours and not get through all of my questions. It's been such a joy and such an honor to be able to chat with you today.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you so much. I feel the same.
Wonderful. Well, the new book, 100 Runs of a Lifetime, The World's Ultimate Races and Trails, in stores now. Bart, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Rudy. Keep running, buddy.
I definitely will. Thank you.